Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hello everyone, welcome to Outlaws, the Thunder Junction spoilers. This is day 4, and today's going to be a doozy. I'm pretty excited to go over these with all of you, so let's get started. First off, we have Stoic Sphinx. For 4 mana, you have a flash flyer that has hexproof as long as you haven't cast a spell this turn, so it won't have hexproof effectively the turn you play it, but I wonder if decks are going to make a comeback in 60 card formats, because this would be a nice top-end finisher. It's incredibly evasive and threatening and difficult to get rid of. You take advantage of the hexproof ability by just casting spells on other people's turns, and that's why it would fit nicely into the flash decks, because you reduce the window that people can interact with you to a very small margin. The opponent can get out first and get kind of underneath these flash decks. The likelihood of the flash player winning is pretty good. It's a brutal tempo kind of play style. Next off, we have Obeka, the Splitter of Seconds. I don't know about all of you, but I have been waiting patiently to play a upkeep trigger commander, and she is the best thing we've seen ever to fit that kind of archetype, because whenever it deals damage to a player, you get that many additional upkeep steps after this phase. The beauty of that is you don't have to wait till your next turn to get those. They just happen immediately after a damage step, and if you pump her up just even a little bit, that's quite crazy, but you're getting a return of at least 2 additional upkeeps main phase 2, and that's why this card is so great. I've always had an interest in trying it, and I avoided it because I didn't want to play a lot of do-nothing cards. Not only are you multiplying stuff, but you're impacting the board immediately. I'm quite excited about this card. In general, I'd say a lot of the legends today are really exciting, but I'd say this is probably my top pick for the day, for sure. Archmage's Newt. Whenever it deals damage, you give a instant or sorcery flashback. If it's saddled, the flashback cost of that spell becomes 0. This is probably the best saddle creature we've seen. If you weren't here and haven't seen my previous video, saddling is just like crew. You have to tap a bunch of creatures equal to the indicated number equal to power. So if you could either tap 3 1/1s to satisfy that condition, or you could tap 1 3/1 and that would satisfy the condition. It's still pretty fair because you have to get in for damage in order to get the trigger, but if you are able to get in, that's quite a powerful effect. Claim Jumper, 3/3 for 3 with Vigilance on ETB. If an opponent has more lands than you get to search for planes, put on a battlefield tapped. If opponent controls more lands than you, repeat this process once. Kind of like Loyal Warhound, but slightly better, or at least it's more dense, because Loyal Warhound only lets you get 1. This is probably one of the best, one of these like White Knight Orchid kind of triggers in the game. Ariat the Beguiler. This is another one of the cool legends that are coming out in this set. Whenever an aura becomes attached to a non-land permanent controls that's mana value is less than or equal to that aura's mana value, you get to gain control of that permanent for as long as it's attached to it. You steal stuff when you cast an aura that's bigger than the target. That seems very conditional, but the nice parts about this card is if Ariat dies, you still have control over that.
With charm like that, who could resist you?
The possibilities with this is pretty awesome. I love lifelink from the command zone, because then I get to play things like Hatred, and if people don't block Ariat, you get to finish them off and return the investment that you make off of that creature. It's a really scummy play, but it's effective. Let me know in the comments if you also find this card very intriguing and cool. Ornery Tumblewag. Beginning of your turn, put a +1/+1 counter target creature. If Ornery Tumblewag attacks and is saddled, you get the double number of counters on target creature, and it is the saddle of 2. The saddle 2 seems incredibly easy. Because of the beginning of combat trigger that this also has, you're putting a counter on something, and minimally your creatures will probably have 1 power, and then the counter will get thrown on something, and then this gets saddled up, no problem. Doubling of counters is significant. I've been working on the Alligator Turtle list, which I'm gonna record today and play on the channel for all of you to see, but I care about +1/+1 counters in that deck because I don't want to play another defender list and be dependent on my commander or 2 other cards to enable those defending creatures to attack. So I made my creatures scalable, meaning they build bigger off themselves, and this is one of those cards that would fit nicely in that deck if I wanted to do that. Geralf the Fleshright. This is another awesome legend that's coming out. Whenever Whenever you cast a spell during your turn other than your first, you get a 2/2 zombie. And then whenever a zombie enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each other zombie that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. Both abilities really feed into themselves. For every zombie that comes in, you put counters on everything else on your board. Once you cast your second spell, you get the zombie. You put counters on everything else. And then if you go beyond that, you repeat that counter process over and over again. You will make a really big board. If I was to build this deck, I'd just do a blue farm deck with cantrips, and then you have a very threatening and easy game plan right from the command zone. Just every card in your deck draws you a card, and it's cheap and efficient. The cantrips will keep your hand nice and full, so you could consistently meet this casting multiple spells every turn. I like decks like that. I haven't played one on the channel in a while. Looking forward to trying this one out. One last job. It's a sorcery speed. For Spree, for 5 mana, you can return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. For 4 mana, return a mount or vehicle from the graveyard to the battlefield. For 4 mana again, you can return an aura or equipment from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to a creature control. If you wanted to do all of them, it would cost you 7, and it's just flexible. Breaches the Blast Maker. For 3 mana menace, cast your second spell each turn, you sack an artifact. If you do, flip a coin.
What's the most you ever lost on a coin toss?
You win the flip, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy, and then if you lose, it deals damage equal to its mana value to any target. It's a little conditional. It wants you to be playing a lot of instances so you can get triggers on everybody's turn, because you're limited to only this happening on the second spell. Mana can be kind of tight. I like coin flipping where there's, something for either side, win or lose. If you wanted to play a coin flipping deck, this isn't that bad of a choice. Probably one of the better choices out there if I was being honest. Laughing Jasper Flint. Creatures you control but don't own are mercenaries in addition to other types. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile top X cards of target opponent's library, or X is the number of outlaws. So on turn, you may cast spells from among them as if you could use mana of any color to cast them. You could steal other people's creatures and increase your mercenary count because of that top clause of controlling creatures you don't own. Really feeds into itself and creates this snowball effect. Interesting theft commander. I also appreciate that should he die, you don't lose all your progress. We don't have a whole lot of Rakdos theft kind of style decks out there, and I think this one was probably one of the best ones I've personally seen. Rush of Dread. 3 mana. For additional 1, we have target opponent sack half the creatures in control rounded up. For 2 additional, target opponent discards half the cards in their hand rounded up. For 2 additional, target opponent loses half their life rounded up. If you wanted to do all of it, it would cost you 8 mana. I'm not an entirely big fan. It's because your opponents are just going to pick out the best things that they want to keep, which are things you want to remove. It just doesn't impact the way you would like it, if that makes sense. If you had the choice, then heck yeah, I'd play this, but since your opponents do, not so much. Calamity of Galloping Inferno. Haste. When it attacks while saddled, choose a non-legendary creature that saddled it. Then you get to create a tap and attacking token that's a copy of it. Sack it at the beginning of the next end step. Repeat this process only once. Not only get 1 token that you're saddling this thing up with, but you get 2. Pretty cool commander if you wanted to do it from the zone. This would be an interesting clone, kind of ETB trigger kind of deck. If you wanted to try it, I think that him having haste fixes the CMC of this card a lot, because waiting for 6 mana to cast something and then waiting another revolution on the table to do what you want can be kind of backbreaking. But since it has haste, the 6 costs, albeit high, it's okay. It's not backbreaking, it's just fair. If you have played a rock or 2, you get to play this, get this out a little bit faster. Hopefully you have something in play worth making clone copies of. Caustic Bronco. This is another mount that acts kind of like Bob, but for the saddle clause, it acts like the vampire that's 4 mana, because if you meet that clause, each opponent loses life based on the card you revealed. The other kind of drawback of this card is it's only a 2/2. It's really easy to stuff out. Your opponent should probably always block this, and there's no reason not to. Because it doesn't have a keyword that gives it some evasion, this card's probably going to be a little bit of a bulk rare. Pitiless Carnage. Sack any number of permanents you control, draw that many cards. Because this is a sorcery, it's a little disappointing. You can't respond to board wipes and get your value off Plum of the Forbidden. The nice part about this is you could cast it for 3 and set it aside until you want to do some kind of big
winning combo, killer combo actually.
Doc Arlock, Grizzled Genius. 2 mana, 2/3. Spells you cast from graveyard or exile cost 2 less. Plotted cards from your hand cost 2 less. That's awesome. He's just a mega coupon. Very mana efficient, fits the plot mechanic nicely. If you wanted to play this as your commander, it wouldn't be a field bad if there isn't enough plot cards to make a single cohesive deck, because the top paragraph will allow you to add enough synergistic spells to the deck to warrant having this as your commander. Rakdos joins up. On ETB, returning a creature from a graveyard to the battlefield with 2 counters on it. When a legendary creature control dies, deals damage equal to that creature's power to target opponent. This is a pretty scary legendary enchantment for those historic decks that are out there. Probably a solid win condition closeout games in those historic decks if you are in Rakdos colors. Karavek the Punisher, mono black. Whenever you commit a crime, exile up to 1 target black card from your graveyard, copy it, may cast the copy. If you do, lose 2 life. I like that it's any black card, so it kind of goes outside of its color pie norms, in that most of the time black can only bring back creatures. This can bring back anything. It kind of reminds me of the 3-drop from Betrayers of Kamigawa, and that guy was unique strictly because you could hit instants. Now we get to extend that just a little bit further, and for the same mana cost, better power and toughness. Power creep at its finest right here, everybody. This is another legendary creature I'm extremely interested to play. And you may exile it the second time, but it basically turns your cards into 2, and that's why it's super good. Baron Bertram Greywater. Whenever one or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 black vampire rogue, only triggers once a turn, and then for 2 mana you could sack another creature or artifact to draw a card. 2 mana enchantment from the original Ixalan set. The top ability is just a quality of life kind of thing. The nice thing about it is you could trigger on everybody's turn at least once. The sacrifice ability enables that. Lila, the undefeated slick shot. Has prowess. Whenever you cast a multicolored instant or sorcery spell from your hand, exile that spell instead of putting it in your graveyard as a resolve. Forces you to play every card in your library to be red and blue, which should be a pretty funny deck restriction to play around. Also something I want to try out. That brings us to the end of today's spoilers. If you like building historic decks, this is a great day for you. I'm going to be putting up polls for at least 8 commanders that I've seen this week that I'm interested in, which is unusual for me. Normally interested in a max of like 4 in the first week of spoilers, but to have 8 that I'm interested in, that's a pretty sweet set in my opinion. I love the set a lot in terms of functionality. I guess I like it flavor-wise too. The Wild Wild West should be crazy. It should have entities from all over the multiverse all jammed in here. It kind of adds a little bit of flavor to the wild part of the West. Let me know in the comments below if you're just as excited about these legendary creatures as I am. I'm gonna have a lot of content creation on my hands because all this is going to be legal on Magic the Gathering Online, so I'll actually get to play all of these. And I've fallen behind because of the Fallout spoilers, but hopefully I'll catch up over this weekend. Spoilers don't happen on the weekend, so I'm just going to be doing deck builds of these new commanders, which are going to be challenging because they're brand new. There is going to be very little inspiration that I could pull from other brewers out there. It's just going to be my thoughts and me alone in this task until Reddit picks me apart and gives me some good ideas. That's the beautiful part about posting my content on Reddit. I'd say 90% of the time I actually get solid feedback. And the best iteration of my deck is actually not the day I post the video of it. It's usually like the day or 2 days after, because then the hive mind comes together, we just build off of each other and get to make the coolest thing possible. So if you enjoyed my video today, I'm going to be doing spoilers next week. I do plenty of other stuff, so subscribe so you can stay notified of when I do things, and take care now. Bye.
Thank you.